Thursday and wedding bells ring in Emmerdale.
To be my lawful wedded husband.
3D looks at a city for only old people. The Bill tackle a vicious attack. Then new comedy in My Wonderful Life.
Do you have a problem with authority?
Come on, I haven't assaulted anyone in ages.
And tough new drama in Bodyguards.
All your men to back off or I'll have them disarmed and stood down.
Get out of the way! Be on your guard for Thursday on Yorkshire.
Now on Yorkshire at 12:30 on polling day, the news from ITN.
From the studios of ITN, the news with Nicholas Owen and Carol Barnes.
Hello, welcome to the programme.
The election day headlines. After all the talking, now the voting, amid tight security. May Day and the first hosepipe ban of 1997 after the two driest years for centuries. And Paul McCartney on his new album, and life with wife Linda.
After the longest election campaign in living memory, voting is at last underway in the 1997 general election. The leaders of the three main parties cast their vote this morning, amid hopes that the spring sunshine will encourage a high turnout. A record 659 seats, 8 more than in 1992, are being contested. 3,720 candidates are standing, another record. 686 are women, the highest proportion ever. 43,000 polling stations are open and 44 million people are eligible to vote. Here's our political correspondent, Jackie Ashley.
An early morning stroll through the Somerset countryside for Paddy Ashdown, wife Jane and their dog Luke, on their way to vote just after 9 o'clock this morning. Then the prospect of a quiet day for the first time in 6 weeks before the polls close. Just half an hour later, John Major, accompanied by Norma, was on his way to vote in his Cambridgeshire constituency, with security very much in evidence. They emerged a short time later with son James to pose for yet more pictures. Voting was a family affair too for the Blairs. Mr. Blair's 3 children, Ewan, Nicky and Catherine, rarely seen during the campaign, went to the polling station and were given a quick lesson in helping the photographers.
Last one here. Right, everyone's over there.
For the people of the Orkneys, the polling station was more than a simple stroll away. The ferry was busy taking them to vote. In Wales, it was a ride on horseback to one of the smallest polling stations in the country, at Capel Feen. Some polling stations were makeshift, like this tent at Brislington in Bristol. Others specially adapted. This monastery down in the southwest was taken over for the day to become one of the country's most unusual polling stations. Security, particularly in the London area, was stringent to guard against the possibility of terrorists disrupting election day. And while the fine weather was encouraging voters to turn out, most of the animals who'd featured in the campaign were trying to help too. An organisation called Rock the Vote had them assemble outside Westminster. Their aim, to get young people to the polling stations. Jackie Ashley, ITN.
And we'll bring you all the election results and analysis tonight and throughout the day tomorrow. Our special Election 97 programme will be hosted by Jonathan Dimbleby with fellow presenters Michael Brunson, Alistair Stewart and Sue Lawley. We'll have the cameras at all the crucial counts around the country to bring you the key results as they happen. Join us for Election 97 on ITV from 10 o'clock tonight, or log on to ITN's election website for a full results service and the pick of the election night news. And Jonathan Dimbleby is in the studio with me now. Jonathan, how can we expect the programme to pan out tonight?
Well, it's going to be an extraordinary night, whatever the result. If the polls are right, then Britain will be putting into office a Labour Party for the first time since 1974. If the polls are wrong, then John Major and the Tories will have an unprecedented 5th term in office. Whichever way it goes, it is going to be exciting. And we are geared up. You were talking about it just now. We have a wonderful, huge, exciting set. We've got terrific talent in the form of ITN's best. And we are covering the country. It starts with telling the audience, the viewers, how it's going to go. We want it to be clear. We don't want to burden everyone with a mass of unnecessary statistics. We explain what's happening. We keep going over to show where we are, dotted around the whole of the United Kingdom, from Scotland to the corners of Cornwall. And then the results start to come in. They come in not too fast to start with, but you begin to look at them. Our analysts are in the back saying, what's this going to mean? What would it mean if it was like this elsewhere in the country? And then they start to flow thick and fast, and by 12, 1, 2 o'clock, we're working flat out and furious, and I hope having at the same time a terrifically important, exciting story to tell.
Well, obviously, it's a bit of a family affair with you and your brother. Is there any sibling rivalry there?
Well, you know, people always ask that question. I never have time to think about it, and I'm quite sure that he doesn't either. We have rung each other to wish each other brotherly good luck, but we are in, of course, fierce competition, and ITV is going to, I trust, deliver the best possible results service.
Which side do you think your mother will be watching?
Well, my poor mother has been deluged by every newspaper and television programme in the land to ask her to answer that question. All I can say is that I think she's got 2 television sets, and my advice to her is that she has them both kept the sound down. Then she can tell us she watched both of us all the time.
Jonathan Dimbleby, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Fears of drought restrictions have become reality for the people of Guernsey. They're the first in Britain to suffer a hosepipe ban. Low water supplies and the driest winter in 70 years are to blame. And as Robert Hall now reports, the pattern could soon be repeated in many parts of the country.
High and dry as the mud banks grow, the River Ouse near Brighton at its lowest level since records began. Less than half the normal rainfall for the first 4 months of the year has left village ponds drying out and sheep grazing in the bed of the River Lavant, once the cause of devastating floods in and around the city of Chichester. Further south, hoteliers in the Channel Island of Guernsey took a last chance to fill swimming pools as the first hosepipe ban came into effect. They claim the island's vital tourism industry is now threatened.
What we actually need to do is to educate our guests into using less water. We can save much more water through education of our guests than ever not letting them use that pool behind me.
Island reservoirs are still relatively full. Elsewhere, better management may be another solution. Mid-Kent Water, one of those hardest hit, are using regular monitoring and new complex software in their efforts to target precious supplies.
What the neural network does, it allows me to forecast what people, how much water people will want and whereabouts they actually want it. And in that sense, it enables us to get the water to the place, to their tap.
No April showers and little improvement likely in May. Water sources need 3 times the normal rainfall to reach healthy levels, and current long-range forecasts suggest the chances of that happening are remote. There is one upside to changing climate. English vineyards believe they can now compete on equal terms with the French.
I'm not going to say that we can make better wines than the best wines from anywhere in the world, but we can match them, we can compete with them.
For some at least, it may be a vintage summer. Robert Hall, ITN.
I dabble in politics.
For 1 week only, we're offering you 2 match of the days for 1. We asked 3 ordinary people what they thought.
It's a big day for the fans, the players, and indeed managers.
And you, sir, happy to watch Des and Allen twice in a day?
I've seen both of them quite a lot last month.
Really not impressed then?
Well, I must say I enjoyed watching them.
That's better. And what about new added Motson?
His ability to pick up players was terrific today.
So, thumbs up for 2 match of the days this Saturday only at the new improved times of 5:35 and 11:30. Offer available while shots last. Teams can go up as well as down.
This is BBC One. Now the 1 o'clock news with Edward Sturton.
To the polls at last, will one of the warmest days of the year push up voter turnout? Good afternoon. The security is tight. The polling stations are open till 10 tonight. The other headlines: loyalists at the Maze have taken their protest into its 3rd day. The UN is struggling to repatriate thousands of Rwandan refugees from Zaire, and the peace talks have been postponed again. And of mice and men, what these well-muscled rodents can offer humans. After 6 weeks crisscrossing the country in the longest campaign this century, the main party leaders were back in their own constituencies to cast their votes this morning. Polling stations opened at 7. It's the warmest day of the year so far across much of Britain, which could increase the turnout.
Having completed last-minute preparations, Election 97 started in warm sunshine for much of the country. Here in Lincolnshire, the weather drew out these early voters. But in many places, like here in West London, fine weather or not, there's a sense of relief the campaign is now over.
Just glad it's all over, and then we can put our viewpoint over. You know, whoever you think gets in, but we're glad it's all over, and we'll see what happens from now on in. It'll either be tears or laughter, won't it?
I think a lot of people have probably switched off. I mean, I know, I was always going to vote, but a lot of people I know just got so fed up they went on holiday.
The current IRA campaign means security is a major problem at many polling stations in this election. Armed guards have been posted across Northern Ireland, including here in Belfast. Hoping to extend 18 years of Conservative government, John Major arrived in relaxed mood at Great Stewkley in his Huntingdon constituency. After voting, Mr Major went off on a final tour of party offices, surrounded by the usual entourage of press and media. In his northeast constituency of Sedgefield, a shirt-sleeved Tony Blair made today's voting a family affair. Keeping with tradition on polling day, the Labour leader said little about his intention of becoming the next Prime Minister. In Yeovil, an ever-obliging Paddy Ashdown combined a visit to the polling station with a walk for the family dog. Mr Ashdown is hoping for a significant increase in the number of Liberal Democrat MPs. A May Day election has brought out the fun side of electioneering as well. These Morris dancers in the Midlands providing a musical backing to the serious business of voting.
It's very good, yes. I mean, it's you get up early and you come up here and a bit of entertainment. It's wonderful, yeah. Lovely day. Yeah, so good.
Whatever the result of today's election, new records will be set. The number of candidates standing, 3,717. The number of women, 685. And the number of MPs to be elected, 659 in all, 8 more than in 1992. But with voting in many local elections as well today, it's the numbers in the ballot boxes that count. The first general election results are due around midnight. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Talks to end the protest by loyalist prisoners at the Maze jail near Belfast will resume this afternoon. Politicians representing the inmates will meet officials from the Northern Ireland office. Our Ireland correspondent Dennis Murray reports.
The rooftop protest at the Maze has been, in the words of a loyalist spokesman, suspended, but the prisoners' flags and banners are still there. Visits to all loyalist prisoners have been stopped. None of them are cooperating with the new headcounts, which involve them being locked in their cells, but only one group was involved in the rooftop protest. The party representing them meets prison service officials this afternoon for the second time. One of its leaders met a prisoner's representative at the jail this morning.
We have put forward proposals, and I think the situation has calmed down, and the prisoners have called off their rooftop protest, and hopefully some normality can come back into the prison, and some dialogue can take place between the prisoners and the officials, and hopefully the proposals that we have put forward can be looked at very seriously and can find us a way out of this problem.
There's been a series of bomb alerts across Belfast, with vehicles abandoned in 7 different locations. Warnings were given, but there was no code word and no organisation has accepted responsibility. At least one controlled explosion has been carried out by army experts, and with one alert on the city's main ring road, there's traffic chaos. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
And Dennis joins us now live. Dennis, these security alerts all too familiar in England over the past few weeks. Any idea who's behind today's incident?
Well, the IRA were behind all the alerts in England over the last few weeks, and it's a tactic they used here for a long time. But a lot of these alerts are in nationalist areas, which would lead one to suspect that they're loyalists. But as I said in the report, nobody's given a code word when the warnings were given, and no organisations accepted responsibility. But I would say the feeling in Belfast probably is that it's the work of loyalists.
And how would you rate the prospects for the talks this afternoon trying to resolve the Maze protest?
Well, the two sides aren't that far apart, but I think the problem is this. The loyalist prisoners resent very much actually being locked in their cells for the head counts. John White said that the prisoners' representative he met this morning said the prisoners were adamant they didn't want to be locked up, but would accept as many head counts as the prison authorities thought fit, but not with the cell doors locked. But I think the prison service would feel that if a report after a tunnel escape attempt says that the prisoners should be locked up during the head counts, well, if you're going to introduce that regime, then you have to have it for the whole prison.
Dennis, thank you very much indeed. The UN's refugee agency, the UNHCR, is flying hundreds of Rwandan refugees out of Zaire. Several thousand refugees are waiting in a transit camp outside Kisangani, but aid workers say the numbers are overwhelming and many are sick and malnourished. In Kinshasa, it's reported that the talks between President Mobutu and the rebel leader Laurent Kabila have been postponed until Saturday.
Zaireans are so desperate for change that the small crowd that greeted US envoy Bill Richardson this morning was hailing him as a liberator. True, it's American arm twisting that has paved the way for talks, but exactly what they'll be about is still unclear. The terms of reference Mr. Richardson set out last night are certainly wide enough.
We move ahead with a peaceful, inclusive transition, elections, reconciliation.
Under pressure from the international community, the ailing president may now accept that his time is up. But the same is not necessarily true of his army or supporters. A whole system of power and patronage has to be dismantled.
We have Mobutu as a president. We have also Mobutu with all people who are around him. If it was just for Mobutu himself, the problem could be easy.
Rebel leader Laurent Kabila has once again said that the talks must center on the rebels' demand that President Mobutu must leave office, that there can be no sharing of power in any run-up to elections. He may be asked to compromise. Mr. Kabila's credibility has been seriously dented over the refugee crisis in the east of the country. Allegations that men under his command may have been guilty of human rights abuses have left him vulnerable. He's been told that it will take a statesman-like performance at the talks to regain the moral high ground. Here in the capital Kinshasa, people are already suffering from the effects of the war as trade routes from the food-producing areas have been cut. There are 300,000 malnourished children in the city. In virtually every compound that aid worker Claire Sita took me to in the teeming slums, there was evidence of acute hardship.
This child looks like he was born a few days ago, but he's a lot older. He's 10 months ago. Another child his age will be walking by now and maybe trying a few words, saying like mama, papa, or even more.
There's still no guarantee that the talks will lift the threat of violence. People here talk about a nightmare scenario in which Mr. Mobutu's troops, facing final and humiliating defeat, indulge in one last bout of looting before the curtain is drawn on Africa's longest and most corrupt dictatorship. George Alagaya, BBC News, Kinshasa.
Those celebrating windfalls from building societies converting to banks may lose out in the long run. The Consumers Association claims that the change could mean lower interest rates for savers and more expensive mortgages. The converting societies say the findings are misleading.
Janet and Eric Maidment used to keep their savings with the Abbey National and the Halifax. They qualified for windfall payments from both. But now their money's with the Nationwide, the biggest of the remaining mutuals, where they think they'll get a higher rate of interest.
Maybe there are short-term benefits with banks, but I think in the long term, mutuals are far better because they are in a position to take care only of their customers.
Today's report from the Consumers Association claims that mutuals, like the Nationwide, are offering cheaper mortgages and higher savings rates. It says that customers of converting societies are losing out despite windfall payments. It compares annual interest payments on a £60,000 Nationwide mortgage with those of 3 converting societies. Compared with Nationwide borrowers, Halifax customers paid £210 more in the year to March, Alliance and Leicester customers £220 more, and Woolwich customers £228 more.
Converting societies will have to start paying dividends to the new shareholders. Now there's this middle person who will be taking a cut. It inevitably means that that borrowing rates will have to rise and savings rates will fall.
But the converting societies hotly dispute that. They say the comparisons used by the Consumers Association are too narrowly drawn and therefore misleading. The Alliance and Leicester has just completed the conversion process. Its shares started trading last week.
We have to remain competitive. We have to look at our cost structures. We have to look at the range of products. We don't just compete on price, we compete on service and convenience and lots of other things that are important to the consumer.
But thanks to people like the Maidments, the Nationwide is doing 3 times as much new business as a year ago. The danger for the converting societies is that their customers will take the windfall money and run. Greg Wood, BBC News.
Tight security as millions vote in the 1997 general election.
Tension in Belfast as the prison protest continues.
And introducing Mighty Mouse, another breakthrough in genetics.
News on the hour with Bob Friend and Lisa Aziz on Election Day.
Good afternoon. Polling is reported to be heavy in many parts of the country as the 1997 general election enters its final 6 hours. The first votes were cast at 7 this morning. The polls close at 10 o'clock tonight. Almost 4,000 candidates are contesting the election, each hoping to be one of the record 659 MPs in the new Parliament.
For this moment, early on a May Day morning, Tony Blair was just one of 44 million British people eligible to vote and exercising his democratic right to do just that. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, in Huntingdon, out first to put his cross on the ballot paper and then on to meet party workers.
In all the years that I have been in Huntingdon, I cannot recall so many people voting in such numbers so early. It's a very, very big, shows signs of being a very, very big turnout here.
Somerset, Mr. Ashdown and his wife Jane strolled to their nearest polling station.
Another wave again, please. Just over here, buddy.
The family dog far better behaved than another local hound, which out of sight of camera nipped the Liberal Democrat leader. It was maybe not mad dogs, but chickens, bears, and of course voters who came out in the May Day sun, wooed by 3,717 candidates for 659 parliamentary seats, 8 more than last time because of boundary changes. As well as the general election, seats are being contested for control of 34 shire councils and 20 unitary authorities in England. It's still, of course, a cross on a piece of paper. But when the next general election comes, maybe in the new millennium, people could key their votes into computers, and the outcome could be known immediately. The first results are expected about 11 o'clock tonight, an hour after polls close. We'll know who's to form the next government in the early hours of tomorrow morning. David Foster, Sky News, Westminster.
Britain is going to the polls amid the tightest security